Hi guys, I'm Andrew Jones, the VAT man. How are you doing? Quite a long video today. It's the presentation I did recently at the NEC for Home Building and Renovating. I'm using a new software system, so you'll have to bear with me if it doesn't go to plan, but we'll have a go now. So thanks to anyone that attended the talk, and for the lots of people that asked to be videoed this talk at the show who weren't there on the right day or had to leave before I was on stage, or had somebody far more interesting than me to listen to at the time. So this is how it went. Right, that's worked anyway. So a little bit about me then. My name's Andrew Jones, as I mentioned. Most people know me as the VAT man. The reason they've asked me to speak is the fact that I have 14 years experience in these matters. In that time, I've presented to HMRC about 13,000 claims to the value of about £35,000. So quite a bit of money. So who and why you should be listening to this, and what is the DIY or VAT431 house builders scheme? The idea behind it is for members of the general public, so that's not VAT registered businesses, to be putting them on the same level playing field as a developer, a national developer or a local developer. You must be creating a new dwelling, so that doesn't have to be a new build. It can be a barn conversion, a chapel conversion, converting the solicitor's office in town back to a dwelling. It can be a new build, it can be a knockdown and rebuild, it can be taking on someone's previous half-built house, someone that abandoned a project. But you must be, the final outcome must be for you, and it must be you must be creating a new dwelling for yourself. So the scheme is split into two, as you can see here. It's called VAT431NB and VAT431C. The NB stands for new build and the C stands for conversion. It's important from the outset that you know which one of these two schemes you fall into, and you cannot mix and match. It cannot be, let me give you an example where someone is converting a barn and also building new onto the back of it, so extending the barn. It would still be a conversion, irrespective of the fact that you're tagging on a new bit at the rear. So it can only be one of these two. Now here's the reason why it's important to be knowing which one you are. And this is an explanation of examples of which falls into which category. So a self-build, a new build, a knockdown and rebuild or a replacement dwelling, and converting a building, completing a build after a builder or taking over someone else's unfinished project. All of those would be new builds. Then a conversion, converting a building not previously lived in, churches, chapels, barns, commercial to residential, so the example I gave, solicitor, dentist's office in town, or a factory unit even, depending what it looked like. And converting a dwelling not lived in for 10 years or more. That's one I didn't mention actually on the opening page, so sorry about that. Whereby you, there's an abandoned house, something that's been left to rack and ruin, not lived in since the year dot. If you were to get hold of that and bring it back to life and make it your main residence or a holiday residence for yourself and your family, then you would qualify under this scheme. Over and above meeting those criteria, you have to have the following. You must have planning permission. Now you might think, well, all those projects must have planning. Some of these reinstatements, the houses that have been left to rack and ruin, do not actually need planning, depending what needs to be done on them. But to qualify for the scheme, you would need planning permission. It must be for yourself or a direct family member in the first instance. So that does not mean you can never sell the property, but it also means you cannot sell it in the first instance or rent it out initially. So initially it must be yourselves moving in there, or a direct family member, or making it a holiday home, not a holiday let, a holiday home for you and your family. And it must not have any planning restrictions in relation to its future disposal. And what I mean by that is, it must be something that you can sell. I know I've said to you it can't be sold in the first instance, but it must be a house that's sellable in the future, so that you are actually adding stock of housing to the UK market. So in other words, it cannot be an annex, or it cannot be tied by a planning restriction to another dwelling. Things that don't qualify: outbuildings, extensions, refurbishments of dwelling, loft conversion, annexes, granny flats, renovation or extension of an existing dwelling, unless it meets the criteria, of course, on the other page. And listed buildings no longer have a VAT incentive unless they meet those previous criterias. Irrespective of which one of those two routes, the new build or the conversion, your final outcome is zero VAT, which is sometimes blind spotted in relation to especially a conversion. So how you get to zero? When on a new build, any contractor that comes to site in the first instance, so that's anybody that comes for a day, an hour or 6 months. If they are coming to site to do work for you, as in building work, plumber, electrician, ground worker, SIPs company, erecting, and so on, they should not be charging you VAT in the first instance. But then when you go shopping, Travis Perkins, B&Q, Jewson, your local independent merchant, all those people must charge you the VAT. They've got no way of not charging you VAT, and that's where your VAT reclaim kicks in. Slightly different on the 431C. Any contractor, same criteria, who comes to site to do work for you should be charging you the reduced rate of VAT, which is 5%. And again, when you go shopping, you pay 20%. Come the end of the build, within 6 months, and this is new, within 6 months of date of your building control completion certificate, and this is a definitive timeline, you must submit your VAT reclaim for your 20% purchases of materials to HMRC. Now, there is only the one opportunity to claim, but you could claim before you get your building control completion certificate. And I'm sorry, because I was doing this in Birmingham, I only covered England and Wales in my talk. In England and Wales, we have what's called the Valuation Office Agency. These are the people who band your property, your new property, for council tax purposes, and then they notify your local authority. So your local authority does not band your property, it's done by the Valuation Office. Both yourselves and them will receive this letter. Don't know if the cursor is showing up on the screen. Sorry, as I said, I'm new to this software. But the left hand, as I'm looking at it, so the right hand as you are, is the Valuation Office document that you will receive. That can also be used by yourself to submit the VAT reclaim, but it is not the definitive trigger. Now let's imagine you went past that, but when push came to shove, at the point of getting your property signed off, there's a problem. And you're out of funds and you are relying on getting your VAT reclaim back within so many weeks, and now in your eyes that can't happen. You're not totally snookered. If you can persuade your building control officer to write a letter similar to this, so it needs to be on business or council headed paper, dated and signed by your building control officer, stating that the house is built and habitable and fit for purpose, but not in a position to be signed off by building control, HMRC will accept that letter. So that is your get out of jail free card, for want of a better description. But just to make sure that you follow me, the building control completion certificate is a definitive timeline. So some important bits of info. The names on invoices. I quite often hear that I went to B&Q, I had to get a receipt with your name on, etc. You do not. It only becomes an issue if it has someone's name different to you, or a business and then you can be linked to this business, but in the name of the business. The opportunity to reclaim the VAT under the VAT431 DIY scheme is yours as a private individual, not to do with a business of any sort. So the invoice names must be you yourself personally, you, your significant other, or no name at all is fine. So a couple of tips. Don't use your contractors in accounts at suppliers. I quite often hear it said that people come and the contractor hands over their invoices to the house owner, the self-builder. Those are worthless to you. And very much the same, which I sort of touched on there, your place of work, you've got a cracking deal for XYZ, or your own business has terms set up or an account set up at Travis Perkins and it was easy just to use that, or you have a property portfolio and you have a Screwfix account. And in my instance, Andrew Jones, I've called myself AJ Properties. It's a disaster. Open a new account, Andrew Jones. It's you yourself. And one other thing I need to mention at this point, because I've mentioned about charging VAT, etc., etc. Contractors that are not VAT registered, no problem using them at all, but they cannot supply any materials. If you're going down the route of using a contractor that's not VAT registered, that's fine. You're not paying any VAT, there's none to claim back. But what you do not want is that person supplying materials, because they pay the VAT at the source and they've got no way of passing it back to you. So a contractor not VAT registered, go shopping yourselves, ask them for a shopping list, but don't be put off from using them. So I quite often hear at these types of events about, because what happens is I tend to meet people year on year over a period of maybe 3-4 years. For people who are taking longer, 10 years, just to get you out of jail for 3 there. But what tends to happen is that people come early doors and they're either not got planning or they've got planning and they've not started. So we have a bit of a chat on the stand and give them a few do's and don'ts, pretty much similar to this video. And on year 2 or 3, when I see these people again, I quite often hear it said, things are going well, blah, 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 in the hole. One problem, we get difficulty getting people to persuade them not to charge us VAT on a new build, or be it to charge 5% as a conversion. And how do we do this, Andrew? Now, realistically speaking, presenting them with your planning permission decision notice should be suffice. And that should appease them. They can go back to their accountant if need be and say, these people are doing this, they've given me this and told me this. If they're still uncomfortable, or if they're a company that historically granddad or started the company and dad, a generational company, or the accountant is a generational company where the person running it now learned from his dad who learned from his granddad and so on, you'll hear it said that you should have a VAT exemption certificate. Now, there is not actually such a thing these days, but if it's a deal breaker, come and see me or reach out to me and I'm sure that we can sort something out for you and get it sorted. But the reasoning behind this VAT exemption certificate is, back in the day, if you were building this property that you're involved with now, maybe 30 years ago, we would have had a Customs and Excise office in your local town or city. You would have visited that on the outset of your project and said, we're building this, and they would have given you a booklet and some paperwork, documentation and so forth. And in the back of this booklet, one of the things that they would have given you was they would have filled in this VAT exemption certificate or reduced rate certificate in order for you to give to your contractors. I wouldn't say it's a necessity these days. The planning permission should be suffice. But if you're really stuck, reach out to me and I'm sure we can come up with something. So there's a Q&A at the end, which obviously we can't film, but these are the most common questions that come up. How long do we have to live in the property after doing our VAT reclaim? There is no actual time limit regarding the VAT. I don't know about the capital gains position. That's, I'm sorry, not my remit. But as far as HMRC are concerned and the VAT reclaim, you will not have to refund the VAT to HMRC when or if you move on. Annexes and outbuildings. The only outbuilding and annex type thing that qualifies is a basic car garage. So anything else, a swimming pool, a gym, a garden shed, anything of that sort does not qualify. And while we're on the subject of garages, where garages have maybe a workshop in the rear, a man cave or a flat upstairs, anything of that sort, it's only the basic car garage section that can be claimed for. So you'd have to do what's called an apportionment. And I'll do a video about that, have a look for it elsewhere. And fitted wardrobes. It needs a screwdriver to take it loose, we built it in, blah, 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 and all this. Pretty much fitted wardrobes don't qualify. The criteria is nigh on impossible to achieve. And the criteria being, when you open the doors for the wardrobe, you need to be able to see the back wall. Okay, that's reasonably doable. This is the killer. You're allowed nothing more than one rail and one shelf running the length of your wardrobes. So that's no shoe rack, no split levels and, you know, this in there and that in there, etc. It's just one and one. Let's be honest, it's not going to happen. If you're putting fitted wardrobes in, you're not going to skimp in relation to the inside of it. So they'd be better off saying that fitted wardrobes don't qualify. So things to remember that I've gone through already. Time frame to submit, very important, 6 months from building control completion certificate. Names on the invoices, your name's no name, fine, not anyone else. And don't make up some building company to make yourself sound important at the builders merchants. Myself, Andrew Jones, housebuilderinternational.com. It's not going to work. It's going to cause you huge problems. And I guarantee you that the builders merchants and all these types of people will gladly take your business. But here's a thought though. If they insist that this is a trade-only setup and you have to put some sort of business name, call yourself whatever your name is, self-build. So in my instance, Andrew Jones self-build. So it says, you know, it's pretty much what you're doing. It says what it does on the tin and it won't generate too many questions at HMRC. Make sure you pay the correct rate of VAT, so that's to contractors, so that's 0 on new builds and 5% on conversions. If Peter the plumber says, and I don't do this VAT free or 5% mumbo jumbo, I'm going to give you a 20% VAT invoice and you claim it back, you sort it out, you will not get that VAT back if you pay the wrong rate. And it's your responsibility and it's going to cost you money. So irrespective of what the tradesman says to you, and if you're in any doubt, reach out to me. But please be very careful. This is probably the most common and costly error. Keep your documents safe, clean and out of sunlight. Imagine each one of these invoices is 50 quid. You're putting 50 quid on the dash of the van and you're leaving it there for 3 days. It's obviously not in Wales, but you're in England and it's a sunny day, and over those 2 or 3 days your 50 quid's become a plain piece of paper. You're losing money hand over fist. Make it a habit, make it your religion, put it in the box every night when you come back, or when they arrive on email, print them off, put them in the box, or whatever system you've got in place, and stick to it. And you only get one opportunity to submit, needs to be correct. HMRC would love you to make a botch of it. Let's see what was after that then, guys. I think, okay, then I mentioned this YouTube channel. You're already here, so I don't need to go into that in any detail, although there are other videos on the channel. This is the point where we did a Q&A and some people asked some questions, and then you had the opportunity to pick up these booklets from me, which most people did. If you want one of these booklets, please just drop me an email and I'll email or post one out to you. So thanks very much for your time today. Hopefully it wasn't too long-winded, and If you did visit me at the NEC, wonderful, thank you very much. If not, what have we got coming up? There is the Glasgow show next, then Build It have a show in Bicester near Oxford, and then there is the Sandown Park show with Home Building and Renovating just before the summer. And then it all starts again, because it sort of runs like the football and rugby season in a way. We have a summer break, and it all starts back with Build It in Exeter and Home Building and Renovating in London XL. So there's lots of places we can meet. I'm always available at the end of the phone, guys. Thanks ever so much. Have a good day.